Hi, Gabriel. How are you?
Doing good. How you doing, Rachel?
Good. So to start, like with a movie like this that does have, all of these different layers kind of on top of it because it is this guy's journey to finding who he is and like his family on top of being like a straight up horror movie at times. What for you is the fun of like diving into those horror elements and really making them kind of pop in a movie like this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'd never played myself with horror. Like, I really love a lot of horror films, but I was doing sort of weird, more offbeat, like auteur films or something. But actually, like horror, I felt so at home. Like, I like films that have a level of like suspense and violence and intensity, but then also like really surreal films I like really love. And horror has that sort of like, non-realistic, supernatural kind of thing. And then it's also transgressive so often horror, like it can be provocative in a lot of ways. And so many horror films or books are also like political in some ways. So it's like it's actually like the genre that joins so many of the things that are like important to me in movies. So and then the actual like action scenes, I worked with this stunt guy in Lisbon, David Chan, and he was incredible. Like that was actually my favorite. Like we're literally shot listing with little Legos or whatever, like little action figures and it was just so cool. Like it just felt like a little kid, like doing like Amelia fighting Riley and stuff. It was great.
When it is so kind of fun to when you're watching a movie like this that it goes from this couple living in New York just trying to like figure out their lives into this like completely other world, which is like kind of why this genre is so fun, I think, for an audience, because you're like, I guess it can happen to any of us if we really like search.
Totally.
But what was like with the sun stuff and all that kind of stuff, was there anything that you had to like do within this genre that you just like have didn't think about previously with your other projects where you just like, oh, this is weird that this is a thing I now have to think about with a horror genre versus your other movies?
The horror stuff, it was I guess like even just like jump scares or whatever. I was very familiar just as a spectator of sort of
Mhm.
what got me. And I love jump scares. Like I know a lot of people are like, jump scares are cheap or whatever, but like, I that's part of the huge pleasure I have of watching like horror films is getting a good jump scare. And I actually like during shooting, we were doing some jump scares, and I had one that I was modeling on this David Lynch scene from Mulholland Drive. That's like when the
Mhm.
guys see like the dumpster person in the alley.
Mhm.
And I that always scared me so much. And it was such a simple scene. It was so surreal. It's just like there's almost no, there's gonna be something, and it just jumps out and there's big noise. It's like it's almost like a proto jump scare. It's so bare bones or something. And so I designed one that's sort of like similar like that. There's like no sort of structure, like acts of the scare or something. And once we were watching it back, the edit of that wasn't working. And so I started like, I guess, Googling furiously to try to figure out how to do like a good jump scare. And I came up on this really good article that connected it to this film by Nolan, The Prestige, where they say like the three acts of
My favorite Christopher
picture.
Nolan movie, yeah.
And they do that, but for jump scares or whatever, where there's like the announcement of a scare of something threatening, then it goes away, it disappears. Like you check in the closet and there's nobody in there,
Mhm.
and then you close the closet, you go back, the audience and the character are, like chilled out, and then like the scary thing shows up. And so we started doing that, and that was really great. Like it is a formula that not all jump scares are made like that, but it definitely is functional. So that's like one very specific thing that was cool to sort of struggle and wrestle with. The action scenes just came really naturally, like people chasing and fighting. And David Chan really helped with that choreography. He also taught us something. He came to the edit with
Mhm.
us, and he was like, for action, cut out the frame of impact. Like if somebody punches or slaps or sticks a knife in somebody, cut the exact frame of final impact. It'll be a little snappier, a little sharper. And we did that. It was so cool. It really worked.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do like the Prestige is my favorite Nolan movie. So anytime
Oh,
someone talks about the
awesome. Me as
Prestige, I'm
well.
like, great. Yeah, it's filmmaking. That's what the Prestige is actually saying.
I really love it as well.
One of the things, and I was like, The Shining is just my favorite horror movie. So the minute I saw a naked woman with a saggy body, I was like, this is The Shining. But did you have any kind of like horror elements or like callbacks that you wanted to include, having been a fan of the genre when you went into this?
Yeah, like I mean The Shining is definitely like a huge reference. And then like Blue Velvet's a huge reference for me and Silence of the Lambs as well. And I guess it's like the campiness. Like you get Jack Torrance is also quite campy as like a bad guy, right? Like
Yeah.
when he's screaming, like breaking down the door with the axe, he's like impersonating the wolf from the Three Little Piggies or whatever, like I'll huff and I'll puff. It's just so ridiculous and awesome. For me, that's what I love is like this mix
Mhm.
of like intensity and scares, but also ridiculous and hilarious. Like that, I really get off on that kind of thing. Recently, like I watched this after doing this film, but Barbarian I really love. It really has that mix of like camp and ridiculous, but I was, scared to the point where I had to like turn the lights on or whatever. I'm like really, really susceptible to scares. And then yeah, like Frank from Blue Velvet was a big reference for like Amelia and Hannibal from Silence of the Lambs.
Mhm.
And then other stuff like the music, I tried to do the music myself and that was a huge challenge, but super, super fun. And so obviously like taking a lot of inspiration from Carpenter and stuff. So different stuff pulling from different places. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is, you said Carpenter, it does have the like idea of like the thing in the sense that they're all trapped in a place and they have to try and figure out who they can and cannot trust in said place. But I do love, horror as a genre also lets you dive deeper into these like darker themes in humanity. So it's like at the core, this is like a story about a woman who lost a child. And so it's like, yes, she's a horror villain, but she's not because it's still like an upsetting thing. For you as a director, was that and a writer, was that fun to kind of dive into those elements of a horror movie where you get to have those very serious themes?
Yeah, like, when started like thinking about writing a horror movie more seriously, I really like love classic literature and stuff, and I picked up Frankenstein again, reread it, read Dracula, which I'd never read, and the Frankenstein thing, like right on the title page, it says like the story of the modern slave or something. Then I was reading all these texts about how it's like actually about slavery and like the abolition of slavery, and it's a metaphor for this thing, which had never crossed my mind with Frankenstein, or like with Frankenstein the film by Whale, like the first Frankenstein. It's supposedly a metaphor also for his like queerness or being a gay man or something and wanting love. Like it's much more focused on Frankenstein wanting a partner and society not allowing. And I was just like, that's so cool that this campy ass concept of like Frankenstein can both be like a political metaphor by this like 17 or 16-year-old girl that wrote it for slavery and abolition of slavery, or this like 40-year-old gay man for his sexuality. And I was just like, that's incredible that this very, pulpy kind of genre and very unpretentious kind of genre um has all that packed into it. Like Diamantino, my first film that I did with Daniel Schmidt, we really inspired ourselves on rom-coms and sort of for the same reason. There's this like book that we really love called The Pursuit of Happiness, and it's about like the romantic comedies from the 40s and 50s, like Howard Hawks and all that kind of stuff, like Bring Up Baby. And the whole book is how like these rom-coms are the most, sort of light fare genre, it's a romantic comedy, but it's actually like they have the most progressive views on like a woman's role in society. Katharine Hepburn is never, just the tool of some guy or objectified by some guy. She's usually the protagonist, smarter, funnier, manipulating things, etc. And that really inspired us, like how to use these sort of more, I guess, yeah, unpretentious forms, but to say, sort of more intense or things that are important to us.
Yeah. And I mean, it works. And then, but for a last quick question, with a movie like Amelia's Children, that, for you, like you said, was you trying horror, you've done other things in the past. Is there a genre that you really want to do next as like a director that you haven't tried to touch yet?
Totally. I'm like a huge fan. I know this is the opposite of horror, but of like kids animations. Like I love like Ratatouille and Inside Out. Like I'm like huge, passionate fan. And also like older stuff like E.T. that I grew up with. Roger Rabbit I also really love. And I did two shorts that are sort of like in that genre, I guess. The last one that I did is actually about a sculpture that runs away from the Louvre in Paris because she doesn't want to be art anymore. And she like goes out onto the streets and joins a political protest, but gets beat up by the cops. And there's a bunch of kids in the film, and we did a screening where we invited all the kids to like, give us feedback, like a sort of feedback session with the kids. And that was awesome. Their main suggestion was like put more kids in it. Like put me more in it, which I thought was really funny. Um, but yeah, so I'm working on that. I'm working on I guess it's the model is like Roger Rabbit or E.T., where it's like filmed in like real life,
Mm.
and then you have these animated main characters. And mine is this little robot who wants to be an artist, but society, made it illegal for AI to make art, so the robot can't make art.
I love it. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait for people to get to see Amelia's children.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye.